Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just 1 minute here. Thank you so much for attending. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending and joining us today. And welcome to How Logistics Companies Are Using Automation to Scale. So I'm going to kick us off today by introducing our speakers. First off, I'm Shireen Arjani. I look after product marketing here at Fronts. And then we have our two speakers today who I am thrilled to introduce. We have Jenna Brown, who is the CEO and co-founder of Shipamex. And then joining me on my side, we have Anderson Yu, who is head of industry research here at Front. So I just wanted to make sure that we're all aware of the logistics of today's session. So as you have questions, please just add them to the chat as we go along, and that will make it really easy for us to answer them when we get to the Q&A. So we're going to leave plenty of time at the end for Q&A, so don't worry. And you will also receive a recording of the webinar, so do feel free to share that out with your colleagues after the fact. We're going to keep things fairly efficient here. First, we're going to talk through how the on-demand economy is impacting logistics. Next, we're going to walk through the challenges of automation and how that might be impacting your business. Then we'll walk through how you can actually make workflow automation work for you and your team. And as I mentioned, we're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Jenna so she can give you a brief overview on Shipamex.
Hey, thank you for having me. So I'll give you a quick overview. In essence, Shipamex turns supply chain documents into data. So what that means is we typically see a lot of freight forwarding companies getting emails with important attachments. So that might be invoices, bills of lading, whatever it is. And usually the operations team goes through a process where they'll be downloading those documents, going and searching for that shipment in their ERP, and kind of manually keying in and updating that record. Now, with Shipamex, you can automate all that data entry. So as soon as the email hits your inbox, we process that data, we understand what it is, and we automatically update that transport management system or TMS that you're using. And over to Anderson, I think.
Yes, all right, thank you, Jenna. So a quick overview of Front before we jump into all the goodness that is automation. If your team has ever lost a load request because they just couldn't respond fast enough, or have had two operators reply to the same email twice, or just have a hard time managing the sheer volume of emails that come into their inbox, this is why we're here. Front is the email platform built for modern logistics teams. We know that every email represents an opportunity, so missing one can have a large implication on revenue and ultimately your business's bottom line. So how can Front help? We are a shared inbox that brings all of your company's email communication into one central place and streamlines all those communications so your team will never let a load request fall through the crack. So without further ado, let's dive in. So we are in an era of right now, and logistics is at the forefront of that shift. You have companies like Uber, Amazon, Postmates, and even Netflix. These companies have conditioned consumers to expect everything on demand. Everyday people expect to get goods faster, with more flexibility, and at a low cost. And in turn, those customers are then passing those expectations on to you. So for consumers, it's an economy based on instant gratification. And so businesses are having to optimize and accelerate the supply chain to accommodate that. Maybe you guys find this relevant to you guys today. And we're already seeing the industry move to accommodate these changes. Manufacturing is becoming more and more customized, which is really great for customers and consumers, but is hard work on your end for sure. Some of the other trends we're seeing that support these changes are things like robotics in the warehouse, blockchain and decentralization edging into the supply chain, and even autonomous vehicles. So what does this really mean for you and your company? Well, all of this means is that there's a ton of pressure on companies to move faster. Speed is now more than ever the new currency for businesses like yours in an industry that's already all about moving fast. In this new environment, efficiency is king. However, logistics is a precision business as well, where it's all about making the right moves at the right time and understanding that optimizing your process is essential to long-term success of your company or any company within the logistics industry. You already know this probably better than I do, but the logistics industry is tough and maybe even cutthroat. Only a small percentage of brokerages survive their first year. So efficiency is something you literally cannot afford to ignore. Now, we think that the survivors in this new era will be the ones who learn how to weaponize automation and to use it to optimize their existing systems. So yes, it is all about working faster, but not necessarily in the way that you've done it before or what people think about. Oftentimes, efficiency is understood as needing to hire more people, but for those who will ultimately succeed, it's really about working smarter with the resources you already have. So automation, it can certainly seem daunting at first, but is it really? Here are some of the common challenges that we've heard from our customers when asked about introducing automation into their workflow. The first is cost, because maybe the efficiency connotation, there is a presumption that implementing automation is a costly investment, an investment that will take up a lot of bandwidth to implement, which is also our second point. Another common one is just not even really knowing where to start. But perhaps the biggest thing that we've heard is how in the logistics industry, business is driven by relationships, and that your customers expect a very high quality of service that only a one-to-one relationship can provide. And we don't disagree, but the question is, how do you actually do this at scale? Automation sounds like it runs the risk of completely eliminating the human touch for the sake of efficiency, but that can't be further from the truth. And if anything, it really is, what really matters is the details and how you actually implement this automation. So some of the things that you might be thinking about are, how do you actually make this real for your company? How do you do more with less? Or how do you build automation without actually breaking the bank? The lowest hanging fruit of automation here is something that we've all probably talked about, but not something that you really think about when you hear about automation, which is your workflow, specifically your communication workflow. And so what is a workflow? Workflows are processes. This can be anything that you and your team follow as part of your standard operation. For example, maybe the way you handle every inbound load request is to send a reply letting the requester know you've received it and are looking into it. Instead of having your team manually reply to each message with a copy and pasted note from some other document, Front can send auto replies, saving you some time there. Another workflow that we've seen logistics companies automate is how they process requests internally. Instead of having operators forward requests internally to accounting, creating all these duplicate threads or multiple threads to keep track of, Front can automatically loop in the right people you designate to contribute on those specific conversations. So how do you get started? If you've ever taken on a huge project, Once you get past the initial freak out, you'll realize that it's best to start with something tangible and affordable. Get it out, test it, and iterate based on the feedback that you receive from your team and your customers. It seems almost too simple, but it's incredibly powerful because automating these small tasks will compound in the long run. If you find a way to automate a 30-second task that each operator does 4 times a day, or maybe even 6 times a day, at minimum, that's 2 minutes that you save per teammate each day. Now spread that over the course of a week or a quarter or a year across all of your sites or maybe your entire global team. And it's a big chunk of time and money that you just get back and that you can reinvest into your company. So now to talk a little bit more about making workflow automation work for you, I'm going to pass it over to Jenna.
Thank you. So I've kind of broken this down into 3 steps. The first step is most simple. It's kind of taking stock of what you have and kind of prioritizing the low-hanging fruit. So when I think about workflows, I tend to think about tasks where some of your experienced operators can really use their expertise to drive high value, and other tasks where the kind of experience of those operators is not really core to the task. And so let's say high value tasks and kind of low value tasks. So let's take an example. High value task, you've got a large client and they need some advice on how they should optimize parts of their supply chain. And now that's where your staff are really kind of using all their expertise to drive value in that relationship. And conversely, when it kind of comes to a low added value task, let's say your team gets an email with a document, an arrival notice that they spend keying into a system. Now, it is an added value task, but it's not one that's really using the expertise of your team. Now, once you've kind of divided these 2 kind of sets of tasks, daily tasks, I'd focus in those low value tasks and work out how much time your team is spending on those. So let's say document processing as an example. If you are taking, let's say 3 minutes to process a document, a team member is processing about 40 a day. That's a couple of hours work. Spread across the whole year, that's probably about $10,000 worth of admin cost. So when you've got your kind of low value items and your costs, then I just prioritize based on what are the kind of highest cost but lowest value activities that your team are doing. And when you're kind of looking at this, really the goal is thinking about how you can shift your team away from some of those low value tasks so you can spend more time on those tasks which really use their expertise and drive value for your business. And since email tends to be the kind of core of a lot of workflows in logistics, I do think this is a great place to start for ideas on how to optimize. Let's move on to the next example. So the second thing I think about is how we automate kind of higher value but very repetitive tasks. So there are a lot of examples of tasks which are no doubt high value. So for example, filling out customs declarations, but it's also very repetitive. When it comes to looking at these kind of activities, I think about it in a slightly different way. So I think about what are the problems with this process being done in a manual way. For example, that might be human error. Filling out paperwork is boring, and when people are bored, they make mistakes. Secondly, there's a turnaround time problem. So when you're filling out manual forms, it does take a bit of time, and that could add a day or more to the kind of service that your customer is receiving. So here, when I look and think about prioritizing these kind of tasks, I kind of ask, what are the side effects of us doing this process manually? And what would the impact on our business be if we were to automate that? So for example, if you today were to automate or make customs declarations instant as soon as you've got that commercial invoice or packing list in. How many delays would that cut across the business? And then I start prioritizing on that kind of basis. Now let's run to the third step. And this kind of comes back to kind of more strategic automation. So we've already talked about kind of just low-hanging day-to-day items. We're seeing lots of different approaches to strategic automation across the business. Most of those focus on how companies are better communicating with their customers. You're seeing some of the major freight forwarders develop online booking systems, DHL, DB Schenker, Flexboat, Maersk, some kind of warehousing, online booking, like from Imperial Logistics, end-to-end tracking, or even kind of chatbot support from like Garuda Vice. Now, the projects that you have is going to be very kind of core to your business. But when I look at the common thread across all these initiatives, they're all essentially applications on top of your data. And what I like to think about is if you look back when companies started using transport management systems, one of the kind of core issues there is making sure that it really held all the data that the team needed to do their job. And so adding that data efficiently into the system. So when you're pushing forward with these strategic initiatives, I think about the same thing. How are you going to automate getting data into these applications to make those a success? Really, that data automation is going to be the building block. So for example, if you're wanting to expose shipment data to customers in real time, but you need still a manual person kind of keying in that data, it's not going to have the kind of real time on demand impact that you're looking for. And back over to Anderson, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jenna and Anderson. At this point, like I said, we're going to be efficient here. We're going to go ahead and open it up to any questions from our audience. So I'm going to start with any questions that have been asked in the chat, which I'm not seeing any right now. So if you just go into the chat portion of the GoToWebinar and ask us a question, we have two panelists here who are willing to answer them. All right, great. Well, I think for now, it seems like our content answered everybody's questions, which is always good to hear. So what I'm going to say is if it takes some time to digest this information and then a question does come up, please go ahead and email any one of us. We are here to take those, and we're happy to, talk further about how this can really be customized and suited for your business as you're starting to explore the depths of what automation can mean for yourself. Great. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate you joining us on this beautiful Thursday. Have a great day.
Thank you.